Allen Lund Company has new offices in Ogden, Utah and Indianapolis, Indiana. Check allenlund.com to reach them.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Cargo theft is still a problem, a big problem. Danny Ramon of Overhaul joins the program to talk about the new trends taking shape this year. He also has updates about what's being done to stop the criminals. For many years, the OOIDA Mary Johnston Scholarship has helped the children, grandchildren, and legal dependents of truck drivers get an education. That scholarship is now accepting applications. I'll talk with Andrew King of the OOIDA Foundation. And finally, two events last week had an impact on the spot market: CVSA's Brake Safety Week and the lead-up to the Labor Day holiday weekend. Robert Rouse of DAT breaks down the numbers for us. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Another week, another decline in diesel prices. The Energy Information Administration says a national average dipped more than 2.5 cents last week to $3.62 a gallon. That makes 8 straight weeks of declines on the EIA survey, over which time the average has fallen by nearly a quarter. Prices were down throughout much of the country last week, led by the Gulf Coast and New England regions, where the averages fell 5 cents each. The West Coast regions were the exception, where slight increases were recorded. The EIA report was delayed a day this week due to the Labor Day holiday. Meanwhile, ProMiles.com has prices continuing to decline this week. The national average was at $3.63 a gallon Wednesday morning, a decrease of nearly 1 cent compared to the same day last week. Meanwhile, truck drivers in major cities throughout the country of Colombia launched a protest Tuesday over the rising cost of diesel there. The Associated Press reports that they blocked highways using their trucks, forcing thousands of Colombians to walk to work. Truck unions are upset about government plans to eliminate diesel fuel subsidies. They say the move would push businesses to the brink of bankruptcy. The Colombian government, meanwhile, argues it has no choice but to phase out subsidies, to cut a growing budget deficit, and direct more funds to education and health. Over the weekend, the government raised the price of diesel fuel to around the equivalent of $2.90 a gallon, an increase of 50 cents. A House bill designed with small business owners like owner-operators at front of mind has picked up more support. Representatives Alexander Mooney of West Virginia and Anthony Desposito of New York are the 14th and 15th co-sponsors of H.R. 7198, known as the Prove It Act. The bipartisan bill was introduced by Congressman Brad Finstad of Minnesota earlier this year. If signed into law, it would require that federal agencies consider how new regulations might affect small businesses before moving forward with them. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association is among those supporting the Prove It Act. The association says the bill would help keep government overreach and burdensome overregulation off of the backs of the men and women behind the wheel who keep our economy moving. Meanwhile, another bipartisan bill in the U.S. House that would ramp up efforts against cargo theft is gaining support. Representative Abigail Spanberger of Virginia is the 9th co-sponsor of H.R. 8834, otherwise known as the Safeguarding Our Supply Chains Act. Representative David Valadeo of California introduced it. The bill would establish a supply chain fraud and theft task force with the goal of improving coordination between the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI when it comes to cargo theft. Shortly after H.R. 8834 was introduced, Representative Valadeo spoke with us about why such a task force is needed when cargo theft is already a crime. He said it all comes down to that coordination.
Oh, that's a great question. And that's something that I'll give you an example of something that happened in my district a number of years ago. We had an issue with a large crime organization here working in the Central Valley, and the local law enforcement was dealing with it, but the local law enforcement didn't have the resources at their fingertips to be able to deal with the size of the crime organization they were dealing with. And this is the same type of thing. You've got your local law enforcement, and especially in California, who are already struggling to keep up with the number of crimes that they're dealing with. Now you throw in a nationwide or a large criminal organization who was very well organized. And so it could be a lot for a local law enforcement agency to deal with. And so we're throwing in more weight behind them. And obviously the Homeland Security, FBI, Attorney General, they have more attorneys at their disposal. They have more tools at their disposal. They've got a lot of things that they have the ability to access and use to help assist my local law enforcement in dealing with these types of things. And obviously, if you're a local law enforcement agency, you might not see a connection between something in Central Valley, California, being connected with something in Arkansas, for example. But you want to make sure that we have somewhere where those connections could be made, and we could associate those crimes together and prosecute those to the full extent of the existing laws.
Of the 8 co-sponsors of Representative Valadeo's bill, 5 are Republicans and 4 are Democrats. We'll have much more on the rampant problem of cargo theft a little later on in today's program when we check in with Danny Ramon of Overhaul. We have an update to a story we brought to you last year when the owner of a truck repair shop in eastern Missouri was indicted on multiple charges ranging from bank fraud and money laundering to violating the Clean Air Act and witness tampering. A jury found Christopher Carroll guilty on several of those charges last week. Federal prosecutors said Carroll, owner of Whiskey Dick's Big Truck Repair, and his business partner submitted Paycheck Protection Program loan applications in their spouses' names rather than their own names to hide Carroll's status as a paroled felon. They got millions of dollars in assistance. Then, after receiving the money, they did not use it to compensate employees, but rather to launch their company and take $660,000 for themselves. Carroll was found guilty on 3 counts of bank fraud, 3 counts of making false statements to a financial institution, 1 count of conspiracy to violate the Clean Air Act, 13 violations of the Clean Air Act, and 2 counts of threatening a witness. After the verdict, prosecutors said they will be seeking a significant prison sentence and mandatory restitution. The Utah Department of Transportation is using an incident from earlier in the week as a teaching opportunity. It happened on Monday on Interstate 80 just outside of Salt Lake City. Authorities told KUTV News that a truck driver hauling frozen food was riding the brakes a bit too much, going through Parsley's Canyon. That sparked a fire, causing several tires to explode. Nobody was hurt, but the interstate had to be shut down for several hours while crews got the situation under control. A spokesperson for the fire department said it's a good opportunity to remind people not to ride the brakes as they're driving downhill. Truck convoy season has arrived. This time of year is busy with events that generate money for the Special Olympics. Several convoys took place in August, and many more are planned over the coming weeks. The next one is the annual Truck Convoy for Special Olympics Wisconsin, now in its 20th year. It'll be held on September 14th in Fond du Lac. Organizers hope to build on the success of last year's event, which had close to 100 trucks participating, helping raise nearly $90,000 for local athletes. A week later, it's South Dakota's turn. This year's convoy will be over 2 days starting September 20th at the W.H. Lyon Fairgrounds in Sioux Falls. Dating back to 2003, the South Dakota convoy has raised more than $729,000 in support of Special Olympics. That same weekend, on September 21st, 3 other convoys are on the schedule. We've got Iowa's convoy in West Des Moines, another in Nova Scotia, and yet another in Troy, Illinois. For a full rundown of the schedule, check out our story on landline.media. And finally, congratulations are in order for a rail transport truck driver who just reached an impressive milestone. John Moeller was honored by the carrier for reaching 6 million crash-free driving miles. You heard that right, 6 million safe miles behind the wheel. Rail says Moeller joined them in 1979 and hasn't looked back since. He was the first rail transport driver to achieve 3, 4, and 5 million safe miles. Moeller has been honored with various company awards throughout his career and was named the Truckload Carriers Association Company Driver of the Year in 2011. Kudos for an impressive feat and to many more miles to come. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. TA Petro is accepting nominations for its annual Citizen Driver Award. Winners have a TA Petro location named in their honor and have $2,500 given to their charity of choice. Learn more at citizendriveraward.com. The deadline for nominations is October 7th. Starting September 12th, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the Petro in New Paris, Ohio. That's located at Indiana Exit 156B off I-70. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, Scott Thompson talks with Danny Ramon of Overhaul about cargo theft. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Capital Reman is your leading source for quality remanufactured engines and components. Capital Reman stands ready to serve all OOIDA members to help reduce costly engine repairs or replacement. Visit capitalreman.com today and use code OOIDA10 to save.
Penske is the trusted source for quality used trucks. Whether you search our website, call our sales staff, or bid at our online auction, you are sure to find the right used truck for your business. Visit PenskeUsedTrucks.com to view our inventory and learn more.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. The national boom in cargo theft shows no signs of dying down anytime soon. Overhaul recently dropped a report detailing the extent of the problem so far this year, and Ryan Witkowski of Landline Magazine is about to dive into the numbers for us.
Well, joining us today is Danny Ramon. He is the Director of Intelligence and Response for Overhaul. Overhaul taking care of cargo theft data, working with carriers and law enforcement, try to curb some of that going on across the country. And Danny, you guys just recently released your first half cargo theft data report. Some interesting numbers in there, and I wanted to start off just by talking about some of the surge in cargo theft. That's showing a 49% surge in thefts over the first half of 2023. And when we looked at 2023, a lot of folks were kind of pointing to that and saying, boy, this is really time of record theft. And for us to kind of go above and beyond what that was, some of that data suggested, though, that maybe there was slowing down a little bit in the first quarter of 2024, but nearly 40% of those thefts that you guys had reported occurred in April and June, raising that number right back up to where it was. I guess two-part question for you. What is driving some of that? And is this something that's just simply going to get worse before it gets better?
100%. And I've been telling a lot of people exactly that. It is going to get worse before it gets better. Ever since the pandemic, we've been facing record-breaking years in cargo theft. You mentioned 2023 was a record-breaking year. Well, so was 2022, and so was 2021. I think what's really notable is not just that we're seeing increases across the board, which is absolutely notable, and everybody should be taking note, but it's accelerating. Right, the rate of increases is accelerating. So, at some point, it's going to slow down, hopefully level off, even, and at that point, we'll be at the new normal. But right now, we are 100% seeing increases across all verticals of cargo theft, whether that's product targeting or the various MOs that they're using. Every single MO is rising in popularity, whether that's large scale pilferage, rail pilferage, strategic theft, full truckload theft. And even we're seeing an increase in hostage loads very recently, which is not something that is traditionally considered cargo theft, but it's obviously supply chain security related.
Is it simply one of those situations, though, where, maybe some of these thieves are seeing the numbers that are coming out and going, boy, I could really make a living in cargo theft, and try and just going, hey, maybe it's time for me to switch careers too?
It really is, and we were talking earlier about, a lot of people got new careers during and after the pandemic, right? They found that their current method of employment wasn't really bringing in the bills. Maybe they were closed. They weren't paying the bills, and they found something else that was going to pay the bills. And, during the pandemic, there was a lot of mainstream media news coverage of cargo theft, especially like rail pilferage in Southern California. And when that happened, we saw, not that it didn't exist already in other places, but we saw an explosion of it in the places that you would expect, the intermodal choke points where there were a lot of rail yards and container yards and cargo sitting stationary at that time for weeks at a time, right? And cut to now, and what's changed is, there's not as much congestion in the supply chain, so things aren't sitting idle for as long, but the pilferage has still gone up, the cargo theft has still gone up, and it's because these actors have not seen any penalties. They're seeing a lot of success, they're seeing a lot of profit, and they're not seeing much, if any, penalties. And so they're inviting their friends, and they're getting better at what they're doing. They're refining their processes and their methods. They're buying equipment, all the way up to box trucks, multiple box trucks. And we've seen these guys get very organized, especially in the commission of large scale pilferage. They will wait, sometimes out of state from the origin of the truck, and they will have that truck identified at origin by some accomplices. They'll be waiting in the next state over to pick up the trail from there, and they'll pick up the trail with not just one vehicle, but multiple vehicles. They'll have a cargo van that is loaded with burglary tools. I'm talking crowbars, sledgehammers, angle grinders, impact drivers, anything you need to cut through metal. And it's just completely loaded with that and people. And then they'll have 2 or 3 other box trucks that are completely empty, waiting for the cargo that they're going to steal. And these are folks that have just started doing this since the pandemic, right? And they're getting better at it. And this is just pilferage. Not to mention the folks who are getting better, who entered the realm of fraudulent thefts or theft by deception, also known as strategic theft, and have been getting better at that. And there's, dozens of ways to perform that. A lesser variant of that could be considered hostage loads, where somebody's going to, pick up a load. It used to be that the simplest version of a quote unquote hostage load was that a carrier would uplift from origin. Before they got to destination, they would incur some sort of additional expense and ask for that to be covered, essentially, where there was an equipment related expense, or there was some sort of weather issue, meaning that they had to change their course, their route, and ended up traveling a much longer distance, and they're looking for compensation. And when it gets kind of contentious, it becomes, well, I'm not going to deliver this until you pay me what I feel that I'm owed. Well, now we're dealing with transnational groups who are forming fraudulent carrier companies strictly for the purpose of performing hostage loads. And they will uplift, they'll even gain your trust by carrying loads legitimately for a few months. And then all of a sudden they have 10 loads in transit at once, and they give you a call and say, hey, we're not going to deliver these 10 loads until you pay me X amount of money.
Danny Ramon is our guest. He's the Director of Intelligence and Response at Overhaul. We're going over Overhaul's 2024 first half cargo theft report and some interesting numbers from that, Danny. And we'll get back to something that you just discussed a little bit in just a little bit. But one note I did want to say as well was an 83% increase in the average loss per theft. Now, obviously, inflation has jacked up the price of everything, but are there other factors that are contributing to those higher loss numbers? I mean, obviously you mentioned these guys are getting really good at what they do, but what are some of the other contributing factors to those numbers getting higher?
Well, it is that they're getting better at what they do. And in this particular case, they're getting better at targeting the specific merchandise that they're after, right? And these folks know, and it's not always necessarily raw value that drives their desire for a target. If they're going to steal a 53-foot trailer and fence that at a quote unquote wholesale level, sell the entire trailer of product all at once, they're probably only going to get 20 to 30% of the value of that load, right? If they steal something that is a hot commodity right now, a product that's going viral, that's blowing up on social media, that has retail purchasing restrictions, or that is selling on the secondary market for equal or greater value than the MSRP, these folks have little to no overhead to speak of. They can react to market trends on the turn of a dime. So, and they're also, part of the same, a lot of these folks are part of the same demographic that are driving these market trends. So they know where it's going, right? So they're getting better at targeting, and they're refining their processes. As time goes on, there's a certain amount of tribal knowledge that is gained, that these folks have experience. They know what's shipping out of certain origin shipping locations. They know what's passing through receiving facilities. They may know what type of, that product X that they're targeting is usually moved in this type of container on rail. So they're getting better at targeting, and they're finding exactly what they're looking for a lot more easily.
Well, I think too, when we talk about what they're looking for, obviously, alcoholic beverages, those big shipments, electronics, those have always been really popular targeted commodities. But some of the things that you've mentioned to me in the past, like I just didn't really think about. One of the things was solar panels and solar installation equipment and things like that. But what maybe are some of those things, I guess in the immediate right now, that are kind of hot theft items that maybe aren't on the top of our minds?
Yeah, that's always one. Solar panels are still an issue right now, and you can kind of track where those are going to be an issue by where is passing new state government subsidies for solar panel installation, right? Because that's another one where you steal a load of solar panels, you don't have to necessarily put it back into the legitimate supply chain. You can sell it directly to the end user. You can drive up to a construction site and look for ask where's the solar installer, and just say, hey, you want to buy this equipment, and chances are you do that a couple of times, you're going to find a buyer, right? But when it comes to other things, right now we've seen motor oil pop up here and there as being particularly targeted, as well as tires, specialty tires especially. Now with those, there's probably a very specific subset of buyers for that. Those are the types of things that tend to be stolen to order. So there's a fence contact somewhere that says, I need product X, Y, and Z. Please go out and get that for me. But of course, there's always the latest generation electronic widget that is, the new release is always popular, as are new release fashion items, clothing and footwear. especially when we're talking about apparel and shoes, we're dealing with product that has a lot more value early in the life cycle than it does later in the life cycle, i.e. pre-release and just after release. Certain things are much more valuable, much more popular. Once the season passes, so to speak, interest in them drops quite rapidly, quite steeply. Right now, though, there's not a whole lot of, actually a perennial favorite that people I think don't think about is energy drinks.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, think about any place that you've ever gone, any point of sale, retail point of sale you've ever been, whether it's a flea market, a swap meet, a convenience store, or a national franchise. They are all selling energy drinks, right? And you're not going to think twice if you find a good deal on an energy drink. They're usually $3, $3.50. You find one for $2, $1.50, $1. You're not going to ask too many questions, right? Everybody drinks energy drinks, and the network that's moving these illicit energy drinks, I'm sure they're consuming a fair amount of them as well. But it's one of those things that just, it flies off the shelf. You can't tell the difference between this energy drink and that energy drink in terms of like the barcode. They're not uniquely serialized, and they move quickly. They're very popular. You can move them either individually or in bulk.
I'm not going to be able to stop thinking about the illicit energy drink market now, Danny. Appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, next time you see one for $1.50, you're going to start asking questions.
That's right. Well, one thing I thought was interesting, obviously, we've talked about how it just seems to be breaking record after record after record. But in the report, the Overhaul CEO called the report a, quote, wake-up call. Now, obviously, criminals are constantly evolving. They're getting better. We've discussed a lot of that. But is there a sense that carriers could be doing more to prevent some of this from happening?
There's always more that can be done, right? And there are carriers out there who are, going through those extra steps, who are vetting everybody in their network and making sure that all their information is up to date. They're not required to do more right now. And I think that's the issue right now. We're at a point in the industry where the implementation of technology in our industry has eclipsed the regulation of that technology. Which means it's creating loopholes, right? And especially when you're introducing technology to folks who are, old school or maybe a little bit independent, aren't used to dealing with technology, and they're in a small company. Maybe they're an owner operator. Maybe they're in a carrier that has 10 drivers and 10 power units. A carrier that size might have an HR department. They probably don't have an IT department, and they're definitely not getting annual cybersecurity trainings. You know what I'm saying? So that's creating vulnerability. That's just one way that it creates vulnerabilities, but there's multiple ways that it creates vulnerabilities. I think we really need the security safeguards and regulations around the technology to catch up with the adoption of technology in our industry.
Well, and I think too, we've obviously talked about that boom in strategic theft, and a lot of that is driving it. And when we talk about what carriers can do to prevent that, the unfortunate answer at this point is almost not a lot. Like, unless you have a direct contract with a shipper, you're kind of rolling the dice anytime you go on a load board, it seems like.
Well, I mean, there's things that can be done, but they're man-hour intensive. Maybe not on a per carrier basis, but when you're dealing with a carrier network of hundreds or maybe even thousands, it can be man-hour intensive, and it takes more than what is required. You need to have active engagement of your carrier. You need them to be submitting information to you on a regular schedule, more than what is available from open source searching, more than what is available through FMCSA or transportation.gov or SAFER. Regular reports of current insurance and current insurance standings and things like that, just to make sure that nothing's changing on the back end that you're not aware of. Because one of the big issues is the buying and selling of MC numbers, which the FMCSA has stated they're going to start to regulate, or something's going to happen about that, right? I'd love to see, the sale of an MC number be required to be reviewed by the FMCSA. I think that'd be a great first step. But right now, you can go and buy an MC number for a well-established carrier that might be an owner-operator who's getting ready to retire. He's already embedded in several brokers' trusted carrier network. And if you buy that MC number, a lot of times they're paying an extra $5,000 to $10,000 to say, hey, don't change your phone number, don't change your email address. I want to keep all of those with it. And then there's no way for the broker to know that carrier is not the same carrier.
Our thanks to Danny Ramon of Overhaul for his time. You can check them out at over-haul.com. We'll take a break for now, but hang tight. Landline Now returns in a flash.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide. Truck Down Verified, vendor qualified. Truckdown.com.
Firestone tires are for more of everything, with more durability for more miles and more confidence in your fleet. Firestone's tested tires help fleets save with value where it matters most. Learn more at bridgestonenationalfleet.com/4moremiles.
Dispatch, I picked up that load of steel, so I'm ready to roll.
Sounds good. Remember, we're getting paid by weight, so make sure to use a cat scale.
I wouldn't weigh anywhere else.
Forget miss accuracy when you're truck on a cat scale.
Landline Now, welcome back. For many years, the OOIDA Mary Johnston Scholarship has helped the children, grandchildren, and legal dependents of truckers get an education. And now it's ready for another round of potential scholars. Here with the information you need is Andrew King, Assistant Director of the OOIDA Foundation. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Well, glad to have you here. Let's kind of start at the start.
Yeah.
For those who aren't familiar, can you describe what the OOIDA Mary Johnston Scholarship is?
Yes. So this scholarship was founded in 1998, and obviously it's named after its founder, Mary Johnston. And she had a particular vision or desire, and that was to be able to help those who wouldn't normally have access to something like a scholarship. So our scholarship program is very different than others. It's not super involved, and it doesn't have a GPA requirement, and it is available not just for something like a four-year university, but it's also technical schools and things like that. And so that has been a blessing to many. And so what we do, we're actually opening up our season right now to accept scholarships, and we have a committee that is made up of board members, their wives, and even some employees, and they will review all of those scholarship applications after the due date is completed, which is always February 1st. So we're opening season now. It will close February 1st of 2025, and then we shoot those off to our committee, and they review it. And basically, by the end, they'll select 5 winners. And the top winner will receive $2,000, and that's renewable up to 4 years. And then the other 4 receive $1,000 each, which is also renewable up to 4 years. And so that's kind of our program in a nutshell. And it's really not that difficult, especially considering it's really just some basic information, and then there's an essay that we ask for the applicants to fill out.
Who's eligible?
So anyone who's can be a child or grandchild or legal dependent of an OOIDA member. And that means even if you were a member and you lived in Canada, you could still apply. We usually get that question at least once a year. So they're eligible as well. And as long as you are under the age of 22 or 22 and younger, you can apply. So say you're already in college, you could still apply to this as long as you meet that age requirement. And even if you have a child or grandchild who has already taken or has tried to apply in the past and say they didn't get it, they can keep applying. And so you can keep applying every year until that age eligibility, you age out of that, which I think is a nice thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to allow a lot more people to have access to that.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's walk through how you apply here. And first of all, where do you find the application form?
Well, there's 2 things you can do. One is you could email me, and that's Andrew_King at OOIDA.com. Or even I've been doing the scholarship for a long time now, but actually Charles Sperry will be picking that up here shortly. And so he's also one you could email. But the other way, and perhaps the way that is more common, is just going through our website. So you can go to www.ooida.com/scholarship-program. And if that is too difficult, you could simply use whatever search engine that you use, Google or what have you, and type in OOIDA Scholarship, and it'll be the first thing that pops up. And there you can find information about the scholarship program, a little bit of what we just talked about, what's required, and then you can also apply through that online portal.
Let's talk a little bit about the application form. What sort of information are you asking for there?
Most of it's pretty general, where you you live, and of course we're going to want to know your age because that's kind of a big teller. And then the other thing that's pretty important is your membership number. So who's sponsoring you? So hopefully you have that with you when you apply, or if you give this, maybe you're listening and you think, oh, my granddaughter would love this. Make sure that they have your membership number. That makes it a lot easier on our end, because for them to be eligible, they have to be sponsored by you. So make sure that they have that information. But we'll look for things like, what high school did they go to, or are they going to? When are they going to graduate? And even, sending in a picture of themselves so that we have that photo ready. So if they do win, one thing that we like to do is we'll contact their local newspaper, but we also put a little spiel about it in the magazine, right, every year. So we give a little thing about each one, and we love to share that. So it's nothing too intensive. And then the other thing beside that is, we'll ask for a high school transcript, or if they're in college, their college transcript. They don't have to send both, but you can if you want to, if they are in college already. And then, of course, is the essay that we talked about briefly before. And that's really just 3 questions. And it's seeking to understand your connection with the trucking industry, to know a little bit about you. And then that third question, which is really perhaps it's the most important. I feel like when I talk to committee members, that's the one they focus on the most. So just a hint or a little helping nugget there. And that's asking, where do you see trucking going, the trucking industry, in the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years? And so you can tell really quickly which ones have actually asked or done a little research, and those that maybe just kind of put something down, So I would recommend you strongly spend some time on that one. It is a 500-word minimum, but you can go above that, and sometimes we do, and that's always good as well.
Okay. I know there's also a cover letter that people send in. What sort of information are you looking for in the cover letter? Well, the cover letter is really just more of what we've sent them. If they download the thing and they can mail it in. So that's a good point. Another thing is you don't have to do it online. You can mail in your scholarship application as long as it's postmarked before February 1st or on February 1st. Even that would work. So we usually give it a week or so because it takes a long time to get to us before we truly cut it off and accept nothing else. But again, it has to be postmarked before that date. So that's really the cover letter. It's not necessarily something that they have to add in themselves. And I will say there are some, and this is not required, but a number of them will send in letters of recommendation from a teacher or someone in their community. And that is always something that is super helpful. And even just giving a little information about activities or things that they're involved in, different clubs or choirs or sports or job. We ask for that information. Unfortunately, not everyone takes that opportunity to really put that in there. And again, that's another thing that the committee members want to look at. It's not so much your grades, though that's not unimportant, but they really want to see what kind of activities you're involved in. Are you getting involved in things, like your community, your neighborhood, you have a job, that sort of thing. They really love to see that. Okay. One of the things that I think is interesting about this, too, and we don't talk about it a lot, but we generally tend to think about college, that we are giving a scholarship to people going to college, to universities. Right. But you can use this to go to a trade school as well. Yes. Yeah, and I kind of mentioned that there in the beginning. And yes, in fact, over the last, maybe 2 or 3 years, the top winner has been someone who's been a diesel mechanic going to a trade school. They're not going to your typical 4-year university or even a community college for that matter. So yeah, absolutely. All those are eligible to apply for this. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the kind of the history of this thing. How many people have received money through this program? We are now at 130. 130. Yeah. So it didn't always used to be 5 at the very beginning. I think it was 4 when it first started, or might even been less than that. And so it has evolved over time to 5 now. And of course, hopefully in the future, we'll be able to expand this program even more. Okay. And how is the money raised? Because I think a lot of people don't realize where this money is coming from.
Mostly donations from members, but also from OOSI. And, even some corporations, Shell has in the past has donated money to the scholarship fund. So it has been building over time through things like that. And that has been really helpful. And in fact, when we talk about awards, we've actually given away a little over $430,000. So almost $250,000, which is not, a small chunk of change.
Almost $500,000.
Yeah. What did I say? Oh, I said quarter. Yes,
Yeah.
right. Half. Thank you. Since its foundation, which is quite substantial. When we look at the individual awards, you think, well, $2,000, $1,000, maybe that's not going to pay for a whole semester, but it can. Every little bit makes a difference, and of course, you add that up over the course of the 4 years that you're eligible. That can add up pretty fast.
And you mentioned a lot of the money comes from OOSI. Of course, we're talking here about Owner Operator Services,
Yes.
Inc., which is a subsidiary of OOIDA that handles things, for example, like the truck insurance.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. Absolutely.
Okay. I know that you've kept track of a lot of the scholarship recipients over the years and kept in touch with them, kept up on what they're doing. How are some of them doing? I mean, what is the kind of the tone of that?
We usually get, we'll send out periodically a little, we'll just reach out to the people who've won in the past, and they are pretty good about responding, and they're very positive, saying how much they really appreciated the scholarship or that they wouldn't be able to have done what they've done without it. And, some, maybe they received that when they started college, but they went into, a graduate program or that sort of thing. And so we have a number of people who've done across the gamut as far as their degree. We've had master's degree in aerospace, aeronautic, and space engineering from the University of Minnesota. We've had people who've majored in biology and psychology. We've had people who've majored in pharmacy, or even one that even was a legislative director for a former Michigan state representative. I mean, anything and everything you can think of. And some have direct connection to trucking, but a lot of them actually don't, and that's totally fine. It's not just meant for that element. It's meant for everything. And so we've got a lot of positive feedback over the years of people who have received help from the scholarship program. And I always love, they'll send in little notes or emails of how much they appreciate it and give a little information about where they are in their life and the things that they've experienced. And I share that with the committee in particular, because we do have a really good group of, committee members, but they do a wonderful job in selecting, those kids. And we have a very high percentage of people graduating, and it's just a joy to see them succeed and move on to other things, and also just hear about what's going on.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering, once again, if you can go through where you get information and again, how you apply for this.
Yeah, so you can. The easiest way, perhaps, is really just go to the search engine, because I know given the actual link can be a little lengthy. But if you go to whatever search engine you use and type in Mary Johnston Scholarship Program or OOIDA Scholarship, it's going to be the first thing that pops up. And you can get all the information about what the program entails and a little bit about its history. And you can even get the application itself. You can download it, fill it out, and mail it in. Or you can even fill it out there online. And of course, as I mentioned before, you can also reach out to me or Charles in the foundation department, and we can get that information to you and answer any questions that you might have.
Fantastic. Andrew, thank you very much for the information.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I've been talking with Andrew King, Assistant Director of the OOIDA Foundation, about the OOIDA Mary Johnston Scholarship. And once again, folks, you can Google it, or you can go to OOIDA.com, and under Foundation, click on Scholarship Program. You can also email Andrew at andrew_king@OOIDA.com. We'll be back in just a moment with more news and information. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2024 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
If you're running ultra-low sulfur diesel in your vehicle, make sure you are prepared and protected all winter long with Howes Diesel Treat, the #1 anti-gel product in North America from the 100-plus year trusted brand Howes Products.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. There are a number of critical questions you need to answer in order to run a successful trucking business. Among the most important of those questions are, where's the freight going to be, and how much is it going to pay? Today, Landline Now news anchor Scott Thompson will bring us answers to both of those important questions, with a look at this week's freight markets with the folks from DAT. Here's Scott now with a report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Robert Rouse of DAT. Robert, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Scott. Thanks for asking.
So as a reminder here, we're looking at last week's number when we had, I guess, at least two things going on, right? We had Brake Safety Week and, of course, the lead up to the Labor Day holiday weekend. Keeping that in mind, how did the market fare there?
Yeah, overall, as we would expect, load volumes definitely, we saw a little bit of an increase. The number of loads posted last week rose about 10.5%, up to 1.75 million last week. But to keep it in context, that's down about 12% year over year. While overall load posts were up, we saw dry van loads increase by about 12%, reefers increased by about 9.3%, and then flatbeds increased about around the same as reefers, about 8.8. When we look at the total number of trucks on the DAT load board, we did see those fall about 8.9%, down to 311,000. That's pretty predictable decrease with the CVSA Brake Safety Week running from August 25th to the 31st. We typically see drivers take this week off or move out of the market for the week and then come back into the market over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, obviously keeping that in mind here and considering all that, again, we were leading up to a holiday weekend there. You would think that the load-to-truck ratios might have gone up. And I guess I can just ask you there, did they? Did they go up?
Yeah, absolutely. We saw all three equipment types saw their load-to-truck ratios increase last week. Again, seeing higher load volume, seeing that drop in truck volume as well, it's pretty predictable. So load post volumes bounced back last week, mainly around end of month, end of quarter, Labor Day, and brake check week. All of those events kind of just lifted the entire market for a week. For dry vans, that resulted in 12% higher volumes. Compared to last year, volumes are about 17% lower and almost identical to back in 2017. National capacity levels were down last week as carriers took time off for that brake check week. And that resulted in 9% decrease in equipment post specifically for dry vans. That's 3 percentage points higher than an 8-year average for that event. The net result was a 23% increase in dry van loaded truck ratio, up to 406. That's 11% above the long-term loaded truck average for this time of year. So all in all, not a bad week in the market last week.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And again, we have to take into account that last week was kind of a weird week with both those big events going on. But I'll ask you in terms of rates and how they kind of reacted to everything that was going on last week. How did rates look?
Yeah, that's the thing that is interesting. And it, like you were just saying, it potentially could just be a 1 week increase because it's end of the month, end of the quarter. But we saw van rates and reefer rates both increase slightly last week. So dry van line haul rates came in at $2.03 per mile with fuel. And that's an increase of about 2 cents per mile to the national average. Then we looked at reefers. They increased by about 4 cents per mile up to $2.01 without fuel, $2.44 with fuel. And that's the first time they've been back over that $2 per mile mark since mid-July. So saw that bump up quite a bit. And then we really didn't see much change in flatbeds, but they stayed relatively solid. They were at $2.45 per mile last week. Again, flatbeds kind of right where we would expect them to be this time of year.
Yeah, so we're seeing a little movement there, it seems like, especially with van. But again, don't put too much into that since last week was kind of a weird week altogether. That said, though,
absolutely,
we've got back to school season behind us now. Labor Day is in the rear view. Now we start thinking about the holidays, believe it or not. What does that look like as you're seeing the numbers out there? What does that look like moving forward from what you're seeing?
Yeah, with the summer freight winding down, we know that fall and winter holiday freight is already moving. To be honest, I wasn't shocked to already see Christmas goods in some of the large discount stores even a week or so ago.
Yeah.
The big question is, will consumer spending during the holiday season grow from last year? There's some projections I've seen out there that says it will grow a couple percentage points, anywhere from 4 to 8%, which would be really good to see. However, that growth is anticipated despite ongoing economic concerns, including inflation and consumer uncertainty with the current economy. So we're still waiting to see kind of how stocked retailers actually bring in for those seasons. And that's really what we'll start be looking over the next couple of weeks. Really the area that we want to focus on is the warehousing distribution markets in Pennsylvania, which are well known for providing same-day and next-day e-commerce deliveries throughout the Northeast. Some key retail events such as early Labor Day sales, last-minute back-to-school shopping, and the upcoming holiday celebration are expected to increase truckload volumes in the Allentown, Harrisburg, and Philadelphia freight markets. According to DAT's Market Condition Index, all three markets are expected to experience very tight truckload capacity this week. In the larger Allentown dry van spot market, truckload volumes increased by 5.4% in the last month, and that's leading to a nearly 2% increase in spot rates in that market. Some examples of lanes out of that area: loads from Allentown to Charlotte, North Carolina reached the highest level since January at $1.90 per mile, which is 17 cents per mile higher than it was last year. And then in nearby Harrisburg, where truckload volumes is 11% higher than last month, spot rates on the high volume lane to Boston averaged $3.59 per mile. That's up 2% over that same time frame. So some good loads out there in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, sounds like it. Looking ahead and I guess looking at the bigger picture here, I think it's safe to say we're going to continue seeing a challenging environment out there for everybody. That's just the way it looks like it's going to be here moving forward. We talked about load to truck ratios earlier, and we talk about all the time really about the importance of negotiating in the context of all the seasons that we see within the freight market. What advice might you have for carriers as we kind of transition into a new season here, especially when it comes to negotiating?
Absolutely. A lot of drivers, first off, look at what are the rates doing? What are things like that happening in the market? And that's not always the best just to focus just on the rate. One of the biggest things is load to truck ratios are really a gold mine of information, just waiting for carriers to go digging, especially for new carriers in the spot market. The first tip that can help drivers out with is understanding seasonality in different freight markets. We just talked about Harrisburg and Allentown. Some of those big markets, they change consistently. So what's good this week might not be good next week. And that's really where load to truck ratios help you understand how a specific market is performing. We also have, other predictive, more sophisticated tools that, can help you say, what is it doing in the next 8 weeks, the next couple, weeks as well? So that way you can really understand how much inbound freight and outbound freight is moving out of a market. Because just because you're seeing a really great load to truck ratio today, it doesn't mean in 3 days that's where it's going to be. And that's where we have to use some predictions and some other things to do that. The other thing is how you can use those to negotiate is when you're understanding, hey, there's a large amount of loads in a specific area, you can then use that to understand if there's not enough trucks to move that freight, you are able to then go back to that broker and say, hey, I need a little bit more, and kind of leverage that extra pay into the of that market. So that way you can kind of work through that with the broker.
Yep. Great advice as always, Robert. We appreciate it. DAT.com/trendlines is the place to go for weekly market updates. Robert, we'll talk to you again soon. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott.
Our thanks to Robert Rouse of DAT for his time. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Scott. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.